Girlfriends is my favorite binge-worthy sitcom. I watch this series from beginning to end constantly. However, since turning 30, something clicked. I thought I was Joan, but really, I'm Lynn.
Hi, I'm Cheyenne Yvette, visual artist and art director of CYACA, and this is The Culture Canon, a series to educate and express diverse stories, characters, and events canon to the Black American experience.
The series, which first premiered 25 years ago today, follows Joan, Maya, Lynn, and Tony, girlfriends who support each other despite their differing backgrounds and challenges. This show depicted Black women in similar situations as the white shows popular at the time, like Sex and the City. The girlfriends were not your stereotypical Black women, and they were all very nuanced. However, the series touched on issues that unequivocally affect Black women, and the characters took very strong stances about those issues. These characters showed Black women in ways that weren't popular before and gave young viewers like myself a different perspective on being a Black woman. When I turned 23, I realized I didn't have real life examples of what it looks like to be a single young Black woman. Most of the women I knew were married young and/or had children. Neither applied to me, and starting a family wasn't a priority for me at all. I didn't have anyone to look to who was career focused or someone who dated throughout their 20s. The unmarried women I knew, for the most part, went off to college and then settled in the cities where they studied. I leaned on my upbringing for decision making and the media for creative ideas. It's safe to say my 20s were pretty boring, and I was reminded of these characters' experiences as I rewatched the show as an adult in the workforce and dating pool. Joan was a lawyer and overachiever who seemingly had it all together, but she suffered in her dating life and desperately wanted to be married. She wanted the picture perfect life. In the first episode, Jones lies about her age, saying, I'm 29, but according to my life day planner, I should have it all by now. The career, the husband, the kids. So if I say I'm 26, I buy myself some time, okay? She was a child of divorced parents and always wanted to fix things, including her friends' problems. She was constantly forcing herself into their business and had to be told to stay in her place multiple times. Granted, her friends would vent to her, but her opinion and sometimes actions were not necessary and ended up causing more problems. An example of this is Joan telling Tony's boyfriend Greg about her regretful engagement to Clay, which led to their breakup. While Tony was wrong for seeing someone else while dating Greg, she broke up with Clay soon after the proposal. Tony never had a chance to confess to Greg herself. During the girlfriend's trip to Jamaica, Joan confessed to telling Greg, and Tony slapped her. The season ended on a cliffhanger with Tony and Joan's boyfriend Sean in Joan's great room in their underwear. This was an all too familiar case of Joan getting involved in things that she shouldn't have and facing really big and sometimes unfair consequences. Joan wasn't Greg's friend, so there was no reason for her to get involved. Maya, the youngest of the group, was Joan's assistant. She married young to a blue-collar husband, Darnell, and they have one child together, Jabari. She was always comparing herself to her more successful friends, even Lynn, who had 5 degrees. Maya was yearning for something new and had an emotional affair, which resulted in one single kiss, which led to her divorce. Some say comparison is the thief of joy. In search of something fulfilling and exciting, she lost her marriage, which was her stability. Tony was Joan's oldest friend. She was an ambitious real estate agent and dated for money. She was vain and the world revolved around her, but she was very funny and had connections. To Tony's defense, she was shallow about shallow things. She was clear about her expectations when dating and moved accordingly. Her relationships, for the most part, were mutually beneficial. She used her beauty to get what she wanted. The men wanted a beautiful woman on their arm, and she wanted the money. That only changed for the men she truly loved, Greg and her husband Todd. When it came to her friendships, she was very loyal and very protective. Lynn was a biracial woman who was adopted by a white family. Her insecurities around her racial identity were mentioned often, and her friends were her authentic entry into Black culture, but also a constant reminder that she wasn't like them. I could not relate to this aspect of her story, and until recently, this was her complete identity from my perspective. Even though the girlfriends were in their 30s, this show was canon to how I approach my 20s, friendships, and romantic relationships. From the opening sequence to their chats over wine, I admired them. I loved the fashion, how they would joke with each other without getting upset. I even admired their relationships despite how dysfunctional they seemed, because at the end of the day, they were always loved. Growing up, it seemed that unmarried relationships resulted in very harsh or permanent consequences, while married relationships were never discussed. As the saying goes, stay out of married folks' business. Any glimpse into a lifestyle that you didn't have direct experience with came from the media. Joan was really influenced by patriarchy, and while powerful at work, she often tried to prove herself worthy in her male dominated workplace. In contrast, she valued traditional gender roles in her romantic life and was the epitome of the hostess with the mostest. Anytime her childhood was mentioned, it was emphasized that she was always by the book and never rebelled. During a game of Never Have I Ever at Joan's 30th birthday celebration, she expressed that she never did anything. She entered her brief rebellious phase by visiting a nudist beach, which was also frequented by her friend Lynn and, to everyone's surprise, Joan's father. Joan felt like she was the only one who didn't have any experiences and was yearning for spontaneity. As someone who was always praised for my accomplishments, I related to Joan. I was very career focused and did everything by the book. I believe I granted myself more grace to have fun and make mistakes in my college years, which resulted in me not yearning for a rebellious phase at the age of 30. I'm actually looking to create a life of creativity and stability. In the first episode where Joan expressed her frustrations about her life, I took it as foreshadowing for my life. And as I got older, I always expected that to be my reality. Weird, right? Because why was I thinking about that as a child? Well, looking back, I realized that married people didn't really make sense to me as a kid. All the married women I knew growing up didn't really have an identity outside of their family. But in this series, these women felt more real and more relatable than the married women I knew growing up. I followed the rules and did not rebel unless I felt the rule was discriminatory. For example, my predominantly white private high school had a rule that we couldn't wear earrings wider than the diameter of a quarter. Damn it. I felt like this was so racist and took every chance I could to break it. After I graduated, I came back for an art show and I wore the biggest earrings I had. I was so tired of being around white people. When it came time to apply for college, I applied to 10 HBCUs and 3 CUNYs. I got into all of the schools I applied for, and I graduated from Lincoln University, the first degree granting historically black university in the United States. Is this more like Joan or Lynn? Lynn was always dismissed as the freeloader of the group, and she was. However, they were all moochers at some point, even William. But many elders would say that that is friendship. A lot of sacrifice has to be made to have long-lasting relationships. The late and well-respected music manager and executive Hovain often said, "The first rule in business is that everyone loses the same." This applies to romantic relationships, business partnerships, and lifelong friendships. Lynn could never get herself together and was more focused on chasing desire than improving her life. I honestly would forget about Lynn because I was too preoccupied with analyzing the other characters in their drama. For example, how will I negotiate my prenup when I get married, like in William and Yvonne's case? Even this is a Lynn thing, and I'll explain that later. Arguably, Lynn was the most objective friend and the voice of reason among the girls. She did more listening than talking and was quick to apologize and forgive. Lynn was straightforward and played devil's advocate often. She would remind them of things that they hadn't considered in their side of the story. When the girlfriends were fighting, Lynn was always available to be the "we're still friends" friend. However, they rarely checked on Lynn emotionally. Sometimes I felt like she was their punching bag whenever their lives were not going as planned. It was like, at least I'm not doing as bad as Lynn. Joan was codependent and more concerned about being right. Tony was self-centered and would make conversations about herself. Maya was very judgmental, and when her husband called, she was gone. Even though, yes, Lynn needed a place to stay, Lynn was emotionally accommodating when the girlfriends needed someone to talk to. Some might say the other girlfriends were just too busy, but throughout Lynn's various weird jobs and explorations, she made time to show up for her friends. Lynn was trying to find the thing that aligned with her values. I can see that being difficult to navigate considering Joan, Maya, and Tony seemed to have it all together. I think that the thing she could own was being a supportive friend who was always available in the time of need. In an interview with The Breakfast Club, the creator Mara Brock Akil shared that Lynn represented something that wasn't popular during the time. For Black women to be loved, they had to absolutely know who they were. Lynn was often Lynn was often questioning her identity and purpose in life, but she was still loved. Mm. I'm working through that concept now in my personal life. When I entered the workforce, I was determined to make it. I wanted a great career so that I could pay for the nice wardrobe, the experiences, and climb the creative ladder. My goal was always to be in a creative business and be successful. After experiencing the setbacks I discussed in previous canon entries linked below, I am trying to embrace asking for help. I recently experienced a very hurtful attack where I was called a mooch and accused of being in people's pockets. This was hurtful because I avoided asking for help when I really needed it for years because my pride couldn't handle even being seen as a freeloader. Sometimes I wonder if I would have asked for help sooner, would I have gotten into as deep of a situation as I was in? Mutual aid involves community members voluntarily exchanging resources and services to meet shared needs. In retrospect, I was very much supported by my village, but in recent years, I felt neglected and even abused by it. My friend group is smaller, and there were many times in my 20s when I wondered when I would have the supportive and honest friendships that the girlfriends had. The girlfriends showed up, even William. They showed up in the neighborhoods that they weren't familiar with to support the new house or apartment. They showed up to the opening, the art shows, and the panel event to support their friends in their endeavors. Sure, they might have been dealing with their own personal issues, or even maybe some insecurities or feelings of jealousy, but at the end of the day, they still always showed up. Throughout this series, it was mentioned that Lynn holds 5 degrees, all in the social sciences. While it is not confirmed, the degrees mentioned were psychology, English literature, anthropology, African American studies, and political science. When you have an extensive knowledge in any subject, you find yourself analyzing your experiences. With my design knowledge, I am constantly picking apart designed experiences, including websites and mobile apps. As someone who studied communications as a minor, I can identify a lack in media understanding, especially in this current political climate. Now that I am older, I can see that Lynn was using her knowledge in psychology and analyzing her friends. She was the therapist of the group and held a mirror up to their face, whether they liked it or not. Personally, I realized that I tried to rush through my problems and bury them in distractions, which for me was always work. I believe that Lynn was trying to distract herself from her own emotions. She wanted to express herself, and sometimes it looked like she was crying out for help in her weird job explorations. One scene that resonates so deeply with me is from season 2, episode 4, when the girlfriends were in a luxury clothing boutique and convinced Maya to buy a $300 dress. Lynn will always treat herself. Sometimes you have to put it out there and trust that the universe will provide. I will always treat myself, especially after working hard at my low wage job. I always have enough for a treat, and the universe will provide and protect. While Lynn was labeled the freeloader of the group, I can argue that Lynn had different values than the other girlfriends. Joan valued image and traditional norms. Tony valued money more than emotional connection, while Maya had an unhealthy case of keeping up with the Joneses. Lynn valued experiences, relationships, and freedom of expression. I entered my 30s feeling very reflective and mournful about the life and relationships I thought I would have. I am also committed to creating the life I really want. Maybe I'm in my Tony era, where she started her luxury real estate agency, or maybe my Maya era, when she wrote Oh Hell Yes, or perhaps I'm in my Lynn era, pursuing art and trusting that the universe will provide and protect.
This entry into the culture canon is brought to you by the word canon, the body of official stories, characters, and events that are considered to be a part of the established history and continuity. Would you like your business advertised to our audience? By placing an ad with us, your brand will be seen by a dedicated and engaged community that values art, history, and cultural preservation. Visit CYACA.com to learn more about advertising opportunities. This experience is funded in part by Magnetism Corner, the gift shop curated by Cheyenne Yvette. Indulge in tastefully sourced accessories and replica artwork, and enjoy 15% off the 1st through the 5th of every month. If you would like more experiences like this, shop magnetismcorner.com. The Culture Canon is produced by the Cheyenne Yvette Art and Culture Archive, and our mission is to educate and express diverse Black American perspectives through art and experiences. To get involved, visit CYACA.com. The Culture Canon is also made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.